Okay, we're looking at a 2011 GMC Acadia Denali today. We're looking at the brakes, replacing the brakes, which is really already replaced. I just want to show a couple other things on this video, and hopefully it'll help somebody either replacing brakes and struts, and also selecting the right rotors and brakes to put on a vehicle. This is not a complicated job. You don't need a whole lot of tools in it, but just make sure you use the right tools and not crescent wrenches and different things like that. Make sure you have the right sockets and ratchets and everything else that you need. So the first thing that I always do after removing the wheel is I turn the wheel to me. You know, as you can see it right here, it's turned out or turned to the left here, and then I'll take a simple C-clamp like this one right here, and I'll just squeeze, put pressure on these sides, and squeeze the caliper back to push the back off. That's the only way you get the brakes off. Some people be beating them with a hammer and everything else, but just remove the cap up here and everything else, and just squeeze the brakes in a little bit. Well, as far back as if you're replacing the brakes, you're going to need these calipers back in as far as you can get them to get the new brakes on and over top of your new rotors if you're replacing rotors. I always recommend replacing the brakes and the rotors at the same time. Some people will have the rotors cut down, and I used to do that, but I kind of stopped that after all the accidents and everything else, and you don't want anybody blaming anything on you. So, but that's up to you. So after you push these calipers back in, you're going to take the bolts, remove the bolts here and here, and then the whole housing just pulls off, and you can sit it on right up here. And normally your brakes would be in the shoes or in the housing to take care of that. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to remove these two bolts here and here, and then this whole housing will just come off, and you just lay that down on the side. I always try to protect the ground from any oil or greases or dirt and stuff like that, putting it into the soil, but everybody has their own way. So after you do that, so there's really two bolts for the caliper, two bolts for your brake housing that are back here, and then you're able to remove the rotor off by putting a T-tool down in this little hole right here, or this little screw right here. And I install mine with a torque wrench, kind of like a slap hammer. It's nothing but a tool that you put in your tool in there, you tighten it, and you hit the end of it with a hammer, and then it'll unscrew there, and it puts a little torque on tightening, and of course you can't get it loose without having one of those wrenches. So that's what I always put that little screw, or take that screw out and in. Once when you got that off, the rotors tend to stick because of all of the dust and everything else that builds up on there. So what I do is I just take a hammer. If I'm going to replace it, ain't no sense in saving it and babying it. So I'll just take a hammer and whack it right here. Bam, 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 and the whole rotor come off there. Once when you have your rotor off, then you can, if you're replacing struts, and this was interesting, these two bolts right here are nuts right here. You would take loose, and then basically you would use the nut to drive the bolt out the back here, which is spline, so it ain't gonna just fall out. You're gonna have to, do not hit the screw on the head, or don't hit the bolt on the head. Back the screw out, have the screw sitting out here, and then hit the nut, or back the nut out, and then hit the nut, and let the nut force this off the splines and then out. And trust me, you've got enough room there to push it all the way out and with a hammer until it comes loose. So you're going to do that with both of those. And then there's a couple other nuts back here. You got to remove that one, which is down to your one of your control shafts here, or your stabilizing link. You're gonna take that off, unscrew that, Now this is going to turn on you, so this, you got to put a little wrench, which I believe was a 10 millimeter on the end here, and then you can use a little ratchet wrench to remove that nut, and then that'll come off there and push off there. Pull out your wires here and here, and then that will go free. This will be free. You got these two bolts out of here, and then the only thing you have to do is get these 3 screws out from up here. Now they're down, I'm not going to pull this off, but they're down underneath here, the 3 screws that sit up in this housing right here. So what you're going to do, if you see that little, I don't know if you can see the little white, there it is, that little white tab right there, that is what hooks this shroud right here, just hooks into that. So what you want to do is push this back, lift this, well, for one thing, remove these screws out of here, a couple of them, and then you lift this up like that, and then push it back, and then that'll pop from under there. You don't have to take off your windshield wiper, and then you just prop this up, bend this whole thing up like this, as far as you can get it, and you can get it up enough, and then unscrew those screws, and you can see one of them right down in there, that silver shaft down in there, right there, that's one of them right there, and I think those were 13 millimeters. There's another one right here, let me see if I can get my finger over, yep, right there, and that hole right there, and then there's one right there down in there. So you just remove those 3 screws. And this whole strut assembly, now I always recommend, the old school days we used to use the spring compressors and remove it and then put the old spring on the new strut. For the cost of it these days, I buy the whole assembly as one. Take out the old strut, slide this one up in here, put your bolts on up in there, up top, and your hood up here. Put your bolt back through, tighten it down, and boom, you got a new strut assembly in there. And of course, put your link back here. Nothing to do down there. Pop these back into place, and boom, you got a new strut in there. Then you want to put everything back together. So it'll be your rotor. Tighten your screw down. Your brake shoe housing, put those on. Put your new shoes up in there. Put a little grease up inside of there. Then put your brakes on, and then put your caliper on. Now I'm moving a little fast here for you all, but if you go through the unbolting sequencing, hopefully you'll remember how to put it back together. If not, videotape yourself. But I want to talk about these new brake rotors that I purchased and these new brake shoes. Now, when I bought these were supposed to be a high quality, low dust, better friction for stopping capabilities. But this is my second time that I'm pulling them off. Now, this whole surface here, which is your brake pad surface, was all black like this. Okay, now you can see it's starting to get normal, or you know, a little silver in there, or polished area in there. Here's my problem with that. All that black stuff that they say is supposed to help from rusting and everything else has now transferred to the brake shoes, as you can see. Now, why I'm pulling these back off is because I was not happy on how the car drove, or basically how it was stopping, the noise it was making. So I pulled all the brakes back off to look at them to see, hey, maybe something I did wrong. But it's actually the quality of this rotor right here. That black stuff is clogging up all on your brake shoe area in here, and is plugging already. Now, I've driven this car around the corner, you know, about a 5-minute walk around the corner, and this is the results after 5 minutes. Now, maybe they're going to say, oh, well, you got to drive it a little bit, and then all of that will go away and everything else. I don't want to be on the road and not have no brakes. As you can see, that's covering the actual brake material from hitting the actual brake rotor, and you can actually see. So this is going to give uneven braking service right here. Now look at the back. The back is even worse. So you've got all this area that still has to be cleaned up. So you only got maybe or have maybe 50% of the braking area because it's all clogged. This brake dust material, whatever they put it on, paint or whatever, is clogging it up. So I just wanted to say these are aftermarket brakes because of the mileage on the car. I didn't want to dump all the money back into it just in case you know, I want to sell it. I want to get more money back in my pocket, but also have a good set of brakes on here for somebody when they purchase the vehicle. But I'm not happy. So what I'm going to basically do is just take this. I'm going to scrape this black stuff off of here, get it out of the air gap in the brakes, clean up this rotor a little bit so I'll have brake to rotor and not break the black paint or whatever they putting on here. So hopefully that'll help somebody put on some brakes and rotors and struts on this Denali. Have a good day.